Today, we are talking all about fat loss or weight loss for the category of people who are obese or morbidly obese. So, this is people who are over 35% body fat. And I'm going to go through a few different scenarios because, number one, the group of people who genuinely are overeaters and quite often overeating junk food or food that I would call not real food. And the second group will be looking at people who are obese but actually feel like they're not eating very much, and that to lose weight, they have to go into an extreme caloric restriction and they just can't adhere to that kind of restriction. And the third group I want to talk about is the people who have put on a massive amount of weight from doing the pro-metabolic diet. So let's dive into obesity and how I would tackle obesity.
Welcome to The Body Never Lies. I'm your host, Leela Lutz. Each week, myself and experts from around the world help you uncover the secret ways your body communicates with you to empower you in your own individual health journey.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to say is that my expertise is not in fat loss. I do have clients who lose fat as a byproduct of what we're doing, but my expertise is in restoring metabolic function and restoring thyroid function. But you can imagine when you have metabolic issues or you have thyroid issues, people are putting on weight in those scenarios. What I do feel is really important to talk about in terms of weight loss is one of the reasons that I believe people have such challenges with metabolism and thyroid and body composition in general is because there is a huge misunderstanding of how to lose weight in a healthy and sustainable way. So that's what I want to talk about today. So we know that the weight loss industry is one of the most profitable yet unsuccessful industries in the world. Now, maybe the weight loss industry doesn't think it's unsuccessful because it's really profitable, but what I mean by unsuccessful is that people do not maintain their weight loss. Most often, they have to go back and do another weight loss program, and this is why the industry is so profitable, because people have to keep going back and doing more and more and more. So I really want to have a look at that, why it is so unsuccessful. And also this continual dieting does have an effect. This continual going back and trying to lose weight over and over and over again does have an effect. And it is what is causing a huge amount of problems for the people that I see. This inability of understanding how to lose fat in a healthy way and how to sustain a healthy body composition. So fat loss for obese and morbidly obese. So I'm talking about people who are 35% body fat and over. Now, we know that this is unhealthy. I'm not going to go into how unhealthy it is. These people already know it's unhealthy. They don't need me to tell them over and over again. I'm all for body positivity, but I'm also of the belief that we need to lose weight when we're in this category. And I don't want to brush it under the carpet with the whole body positivity movement. We know that the comorbidities in the 35% plus category just increase and multiply. We do need to lose weight, but a lot of people are stuck in this 35% plus arena and cannot get out. And I am quite personally sick of the way the fitness, wellness, health, weight loss, all those industries outline weight loss to people because it's making them stuck. There's so much shame. There's so much extreme. There's so much bullshit and it's not working. And I think it's actually very simple to make it work. So I think one of the things that people think of with these groups of people was the biggest loser, right? And it was probably the most inhumane, but in terms of an experiment, something that we can really learn from as a society and as coaches and obese people. We can truly learn from it. So I'm sure you all know The Biggest Loser, but what we can take from it is that they took a group of people who are morbidly obese, absolutely 100% ate an excessive amount of calories and absolutely 100% ate an excessive amount of junk or processed foods. And they took them and put them into a house together. So they were removed from their day-to-day environment and imposed upon them an extreme caloric restriction and also an extreme exercise regime. Now, most of the people who were in this competition went back to their normal life and put on more weight, put on all the weight back on and more than when they started. And it's really sad. But this is what we can learn from. The unsuccess for these people is where we need to focus on. What I notice with fat loss, with everybody, the amount of people in the world today that actually know how to eat enough healthy food for them to perform and maintain a healthy body composition is extremely low. Even my lean clients, and I'm going to do a podcast for those people, we are so afraid of food and food making us fat that we undereat. Most people undereat at some point in their life. And then for those people who do overeat, they think that the only way to overcome overeating is to go to an extreme and undereat. But the truth is, for those people in the obese category, that's so extreme and unsustainable, they cannot adhere to it. And then when they finish, they've got nowhere to go. So they just go back to what they were doing before. The key missing piece for me is teaching people where to go. Where do you live your life? What is maintenance? And what does that look like? If we don't give people this place to go, and I'm not just talking about what to eat, I'm talking about how to make food, what to do every day, exercise. Do we really need these extreme exercise regimes? No, we don't. And most people hate them, and that's why they don't stick with them. But to be doing a lot of exercise, you actually need a lot of healthy food to be able to maintain health in that. So, we need to focus on actually the place that you need to go. And I think this is the really the answer for anybody and everybody who wants health, is to understand how many calories do I need to eat on a day-to-day basis, and how do I shit all of the recommended dietary intake to get all my nutrients, my vitamins, my minerals, and everything that I need to actually get energy into the cell and be healthy and perform and enjoy and live my life. So, of course, when the Biggest Loser contestants leave the house, they go back to their normal environment. So the biggest thing here is how we have to teach people how to set up an environment for success. This is with any goal that you want to achieve. What does the environment need to look like to achieve the goal? What does my house look like? What does my fridge look like? What does my sleep routine look like? Everything. And who do I need to become to achieve that goal? And this is really lacking in our society because, like I said, most people who achieve a low body weight do it by extreme measures. And for so many people, there's this alarm bell that goes off in their head and they go, well, I don't want to live life like that to that extreme. So of course I'm not going to do that. And so there's this huge resistance and they never do it. Does that make sense? So the truth is that you don't need to be extreme to maintain a healthy body weight. You need to learn how to have a balanced and holistic lifestyle. So if we don't change the environment for the person, it's not going to change. If we don't teach them who they need to be to have this goal that they so want, they're never going to be successful. The other thing as well is there's just a lack of education around food. Like, I'm still surprised to this day that people don't know what a carb is or what a protein is. They don't know that fruit is full of vitamins And even for the people who are underweight, we're so swept up with this fad dieting thing, sugar is bad and all this stuff is bad, that we're actually demonizing food and missing out on key vitamins, minerals, and nutrients in our life. And this is really important. So it comes from both extremes, right? Some people don't realize that the standard American diet or breakfast cereal, for instance, off the shelf in the supermarket is just extremely unhealthy for you. We know a couple who are both partners in law firms, and they were weirded out by the fact that we hand cut and make our own chips. They were like, don't you just buy them from the supermarket in the packet? And so this is not an education issue, like in terms of IQ, like they're both partners in the law firm. They're intelligent people. It's just that it's not built into our education system, and it's not built into life where we actually sit down and learn about nutrition. So a lot of people need an education that a packet of chips that you put in the oven is actually full of a whole lot of other stuff other than potato, which is not healthy and is often drenched in fats that are really unhealthy. And people truly 100% need this education. Then deeper than that, people need an education around what is a fat, what is a carbohydrate, what is a protein. And we really should be taught this stuff in school, but we're not. And so quite often with anyone that I work with, I spend a lot of time educating people on the truth about food and what is healthy and what is not, and how much protein we need, how much carbohydrate we need, how much fat we need. The other thing is that obese people generally have dieted many times before. Like, I don't know an obese person that has not tried to diet or restrict in some kind of way. And because the extremity of the program, generally they were unable to adhere to the program. And then every time they fail, it cements in their brain that they cannot be successful at this thing. So there's a lot of negative beliefs and a lot of past trauma that we need to unravel. And what happens as well is the self-love goes down, the self-respect goes down, and then they start using the shame and everything to punish themselves in a way. So there's quite a big psychology in this area that needs to be dealt with. And it's also really alarming to me when someone has been obese since they were a child, because sometimes we need to work on the relationship with their parents. There's sometimes a lot of anger towards their parents, and to say, how could you let me be fat like this? Like, a lot of children become obese, feel that they were neglected in some way or hurt in some way. And I can really understand how the unconscious mind could think that. Sometimes we just have parents who are unable to work through their own stuff. And so they set up the environment where the kids have the same behaviors and habits and beliefs, and that helps them stay in their stuff without having to go through. And this can happen with anything in our life, right? It doesn't have to be overeating or eating junk food. People do it all the time with their kids. I don't want to work on my stuff, and so I'm just going to sit in it, and I'm going to create a family where we're all in that together. And often there can be a lot of ties of love and connection that's around food and being overweight and dieting together and all this sort of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be unraveled here. So, if we don't work on the environment, we don't work on the habits and the routines of these people, and we don't work on the mental and emotional side, we're never going to have success. And I also want to say that we do know that people who experience sexual abuse and extreme trauma in their life can have eating issues. And this, if you're a coach, unless you're really equipped to deal with this, you really need to refer out to somebody else. I did have a client who was actually date raped. She was drugged and date raped. And after that event, she put on a ton of weight. And when we worked together, because I do a lot of emotional clearing with clients, we discovered that in her unconscious mind, she had this belief that if she was fat, and then she would be unattractive and that would never happen to her again. So there's a lot to unpack there. And we need to be careful in these situations. If we take the thing that if we take the thing that soothes the trauma or the negative belief or the pain of this person, if we take that away without dealing with the trauma and the pain, then they will either have to soothe even harder, so eat more food when they come face to face with this trauma, or as we have seen with some food addicts, they will go off and be addicted to something else when you take the food away from them. And we see this massively with the Ozempic issue, right? You actually change the brain so it doesn't want food anymore. Then you're left with all of this emotion and they have to find another way to deal with that emotion. And so a lot of the people in some of the studies in the Ozempic trials would actually go off and have a shopping addiction or a sex addiction or something else to try and soothe that pain that they've been using food to soothe for a long time. So I just want to make it really clear that this is not just an issue of someone being stupid and eating too much or greedy and eating too much. It's so multi-layered and multifaceted, and if we do not support people, we will never get the long-term results. So I really want to question, like, why do they overeat and what's happening? You know, people have often said, every time I get off the phone with my mom and I just go to the fridge and I start eating. We need to give clients time to recognize these behaviors as well. So I actually believe in letting them still do some of the behaviors, not taking them all away. One, because it's too extreme if you take them all away, but two, if you don't give them space to journal, log, diarize around the behavior, they'll never understand why they do it and they'll never be able to change. So for that client, it's like, every time I get off the phone from my mum, I literally just go to the fridge. And so we had to let her do that for a while. And then we needed to say, okay, well, I get to the fridge, but how about I write down all my emotions instead of opening the fridge door? Like, it was a process over quite a period of time that we had to work on that. I also want to touch on binging, because a lot of people will say to me they just binge uncontrollably in all weight areas. And often when I do, I will take out I'll get their food log, and it's just, I get everyone to do a food log. And I'm like, I just want you to be as honest as you can, because I want to see the patterns. I want to see the patterns and the motivation and what's driving you to eat. And unless you're truly honest with me and tell me, I won't be able to see them. So I need as much honesty in this food diary as possible. What I see with people who binge food, one is the emotional aspect, trying to fill a hole or cover up some pain or trauma. But another big one that I see is often if I look at someone's food log and I take all of the binging food out and I look at the rest of their food without it, so I literally go through their Cronometer and delete it, what I see that is left is an inadequate amount of food or calories to support that person's output. And so sometimes binging is just purely about the fact they are hungry and low on energy because they're restricting so much at the other end. So it's really important to have a look at a diary and have a look at these patterns. And then I'll point that out to a client. I'll say, look, I took all the binging food away. And I was like, no wonder you're binging, you're hungry. You're lacking in energy. So you're going to reach for something that's sugary because it's going to give you a hit of energy really quickly straight away. And it's, about helping them make peace with these decisions and educating them on a better way, rather than just going, well, we're going hardcore and you're not having anything that you normally binge on. I think there's also, we'll talk about it a bit more, there's also a part of when you do a behavior, you almost need to allow yourself to do it sometimes. And you can go back and listen to the episode that I did with Lauren Jobson on self-love, because sometimes pure restriction is actually really damaging to us when we actually need to say, well, I actually get satisfaction out of that. Like, eating ice cream is delicious. Maybe I just need to allow myself to have ice cream at a set time every week and sit there with the ice cream and purely enjoy the ice cream for everything that it is, rather than saying you can't eat ice cream for the next year or ever again. That's just too extreme. But we'll come back to that in a little bit more. So we also know that losing weight really fast is extremely damaging to your fascial system. So it's destabilizing, I should say, to your fascial system. So you're very prone to injury when you lose weight really quickly. So fascia is it's like if you imagine your whole skeletal system and have this tight plastic bag around it, like it looks like cling film, almost like, you'll see it when you have a chicken breast and you pull the skin off, you'll see this clear filmy bit, and it's actually what gives the muscle shape. And that's like one huge piece of connective tissue that runs through your whole body. And you lose weight very quickly, that system becomes really destabilized, and because there's such a rapid shape change. Now, our body is actually designed to get bigger, smaller. Women get pregnant and their stomachs go back to normal. When we do it at a slow times and we have the nutrition backed up so that the body can do the contracting and restructuring of everything and bring it all back in together. So we also, in these rapid weight loss scenarios, get massive amounts of excessive skin. So you've got two things going on here. You've got, you're more susceptible to injury. So if you are doing an exercise regime, and we saw that in The Biggest Loser, people were getting injured all the time, you're going to have a negative belief about your ability to achieve a goal every time you get injured. And we tend to have this really negative view of exercise as well, that injury is part of exercise. And, but the problem is if you get injured, then you can't exercise, and then you start not believing that you can achieve your fat loss goal. And so then you might start eating again. So that's a problem. But also all this excessive skin, I think, leaves people with a lot of shame as well. And then they often can't move on from their old self of having been an overweight person until they go and have surgery or something. So we can actually prevent that excessive skin happening if we lose weight slowly. It's the same when women have babies. If they give themselves the time to repair the abdominal wall and lose weight slowly, a lot of those women, and have the right nutrition, a lot of those women will have beautiful flat stomachs with skin that is repaired really well as well. So I feel like, yes, this key part is, yes, maintenance. Maintenance is key. How to eat performance. So if someone is truly, truly overeating and they are under moving, under training, or sedentary, have low physical activity, I'm going to go for the low hanging fruit first. So let's just have a look at this group of people. Completely different to the people who only need to lose like 5 to 10 kilos. The more weight you have to lose, the easier it is to lose weight. So you don't actually need to go into an extreme to get these people to lose weight. You do have to go into some extreme measures when you need to lose that last 5 to 10 kilos that you want to lose. So you know what I say? Why don't we just save that for later so that you only have to do it once or twice to get that last bit of weight off? You can lose weight very easily when you are significantly overweight. And so my theory is always to go for the low-hanging fruit first. And I would say the easiest thing to do when you are truly overweight from a lack of exercise and an excessive amount of calories, generally, especially if you're eating the standard American diet, which is pretty much the standard Australian diet, the standard British diet, it's a diet that's very high in carbohydrate and very high in fat. But what's missing is the protein. So one of the first things that I do is teach people about high quality protein and how to eat enough protein for their needs. we know that increasing your protein intake, because of a thermic effect of food, so it takes more energy to break down protein, you will put yourself into a calorie deficit straight away and you will burn more fat. Not a huge amount, but in this group of people who are obese and under eating protein, there are studies that show they lose a significant amount of weight just from increasing their protein intake. And I'm not talking about just having all these whey shakes. I'm talking about teaching these people what is protein and what are quality proteins, because then increasing those proteins, we're also going to increase, as a byproduct, we're going to increase a lot of minerals, especially zinc, which is super important in the ability to taste. And so a lot of people who eat junk food don't say healthy food just doesn't taste nice. And we need to work on that by increasing their zinc. And a lot of things that we need to improve metabolism are, for instance, B vitamins, and they are all in good, healthy animal protein, especially things like oysters, liver, shellfish. So I'm going to go for the low-hanging fruit and teach them to eat more of all these things. And generally, as a byproduct, they will automatically eat less of the other things. But I haven't told them to eat less of anything. So this is a really important mindset change for people as well. You want me to eat more of something and you want me to focus on eating more instead of restricting? Like, incredible. Obviously, if people are eating McDonald's, they are getting protein from the meat from McDonald's. So I might actually start with, okay, well, we're going to get some healthy burgers and do a swap, okay? And I think this is really important too. It's like, well, you can still have a hamburger. We just need to make it at home or get it from a different place. So it's like an organic sourdough bun and really good high quality grass-fed beef that's preferably a lot leaner. And maybe we might have that with some low-fat Swiss cheese. So again, I'm increasing the protein while not increasing, I'm actually decreasing the fat. And we might make some potatoes at home, like, it's really simple, get them in an air fryer, teach them how to make chips. And so we've gone from, which would be one of my next steps, easily into just swapping food. So swapping out the junk food to nutrient-dense food. I haven't implemented any restriction here. I'm just saying, we'll take what you love. This person loves hamburgers, we'll take what you love, we'll make it healthy. That is already going to have an amazing effect because that food is going to be more nutrient dense. And we know that nutrient dense food, you can actually make energy out of it. Food that is empty calories. So we know, for example, if someone eats McDonald's 3 times a day, say they're eating 3,000 calories at McDonald's. There was a guy who did this. He was eating 3,000 calories of Whole Foods. He switched to 3,000 calories at McDonald's every day and he put on weight just at the same amount of calories, but also he said he could not stop thinking about food. So we know that kind of food doesn't satisfy the body in any way. So I would be doing as many healthy swaps as I possibly could from the food that they love to a healthier version. And so like with ice cream, for instance, I would say have Haagen-Dazs ice cream vanilla. It's just eggs, cream and sugar, no preservatives, no additives, no chemicals, no nothing. Let's just swap from that food to the other food. And let's also, I would start going at the right time and say, well, let's just portion control that. We'll have a burger, but we'll come to the calories in a minute. So my second step after improving protein would be to increase their step count. Now, I cannot tell you what an amazing carryover walking has for fat loss, especially if you're sedentary. And remember I said, so any kind of stimulus that you change in the body, you're going to have a really positive response because this body is so not used to that. So for me, like increasing protein is not really going to do that much because I already eat quite a high level of protein and I have quite a high level of muscle mass for my heart. Whereas if I eat someone who doesn't eat protein and doesn't exercise and I just give them a program that gets them moving more every day and eating more protein every day, they're going to see significant benefit to adding in those things. So increasing your daily step count. And I don't care if that person is not walking at all, I'm going to say, let's do 1,000 steps. on week 1, increase to 2,000 on week 2, 3,000 to week 3, whatever it is. And I'm generally going to at least start with, after you've had a meal, I would like you to walk for 10 to 15 minutes after each meal. This is really important too because it will make them stop and think that they have finished eating. We know that when we walk after a meal, we can balance our blood sugar better, we utilize the energy in the food better. So I would just start by, have your breakfast, go for a walk. Have your lunch, go for a walk. Have your dinner, go for a walk. Very, very simple. So yes, healthy swaps already do, recreating meals with healthy thing and then starting with portion control. I just want to say on the calorie side of things, if someone is truly eating an excessive amount of calories, like I generally don't start with the calorie counting first because like I said, increase the protein, they generally decrease the fats and carbs automatically because you become more satiated. So I don't look at calories for some time for a lot of people, but they're in the back of my mind when I'm looking at their log. I don't really turn their calories off so they can't see them, but I can see them myself when I look at their chronometer. And I'm starting to get an idea of actually how much do they really eat. If someone truly is overeating, like let's say for an example, someone my height, 5'9", is 90 to 100 kilos and they genuinely are eating 4,000, 5,000 calories a day. It's 3,500. I would start with just decreasing their calories by 20%. They will have a fat loss from decreasing their calories by 20%. So say if you're eating 3,500 calories and reduce that by 20%, that's 2,800 calories. That's not restricting. Like you can eat quite a good amount of food in that and they're probably not going to notice too much of a restriction. And you know what? You're going to be able to adhere to that because you're not going to be starving. And the problem with being really hungry is that you're more likely to reach for the sugary things, right? And the key thing is here, you can, because it's so much easier to lose weight, this high weight, you can decrease the calories by 20%. They will have some fat loss and generally I'll keep them on that until they naturally eat less because of the healthy swaps. Or I will then implement another 20% once they get to a plateau though, so they stop losing weight, then I'll decrease again to 20%. And I'll keep decreasing by 20% until we get to what their projected maintenance should be. So say for me, if I was sedentary or if I was just walking every day, probably a maintenance for me would be about 2,000 calories. And I can be honest and say when I was 95 kilos, I actually lost the first 15 kilos just by eating 2,000 calories and walking 15,000 steps every day. I didn't put on that weight because of eating an excessive amount of calories. I'll come back to it later, but it is truly possible to lose weight. When you have an excessive amount of fat, it is truly possible to lose weight without going into extreme caloric restriction. And that applies also to the people who are under eating and the pro-metabolic people that I'll come back to in a minute. Now, while I'm doing all of this, I also want to be looking at, the other areas like increasing strength training. So obviously these people, a lot of them have an aversion to going to the gym because of the way they look. That's okay. We can start with body weight exercises outside, at home. But I really want to focus on strength training. So walking and also walking with your mouth closed, breathing in and out through your nose. And we'll come back to that at the end. I want to talk about carbon dioxide and oxygen. But walking with your mouth closed, breathing in and out through your nose for getting up to 10,000 steps a day and increasing strength training. So you might start just by doing body weight exercise and just doing squats, just doing push-ups against the wall, doing lunges at home. When you've never exercised before, you're going to have amazing results just from doing those simple things. And then obviously as it gets easier, you will need to increase the stimulus. And so you might have to start adding weight, going to the gym, etc. But you could really have a fantastic weight loss response by just strength training 2 to 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week and walking every day. We don't need to do this extreme exercise And, I'll come back to it again. I mean, I've had arguments with personal trainers. I've had clients come to me and I'm like, show me your exercise program. And they're showing me, or they don't have one, normally. What they do when they meet their trainer is their trainer just flogs the crap out of them. And they're like, well, I'm not getting any results. And I'm like, well, again, we can talk about this a bit later when we talk about why. But the big thing is that I'm really passionate about is not these overweight people feeling like they're being punished and this addiction to punishment and shame. We really need to tackle that. And it's unnecessary. It is completely unnecessary to do that high intensity exercise. You are much better off walking and doing strength training, increasing your protein, increasing your muscle mass, because this will allow you to burn more fat. You'll get a much better response. When we go into this high intensity exercise and we're unable to burn carbohydrates at the cell level, we put ourselves into more of an energy deficit. And so we can really block our ability to lose fat. We have to get out of this whole, you have to absolutely exhaust yourself and beat yourself up to achieve a fat loss result. It's not true. And people are not going to stick with that routine. I really want to see trainers and coaches implementing the programs that truly work and also people are going to adhere to. And this can be hard because, I've worked with obese people who have a codependent relationship with their trainer. Their trainer's like the only person that they speak to all week. The trainer beats the crap out of them or makes them like sweat their guts out. And then they have this really nice chat at the end of the session. The trainer's not actually thinking that much or doing that much work. And so when I say to them, no, you need to design a program and you need to put progressive overload in that program and you need to teach this person how to train, how to squat properly, all of a sudden they have to do this work that they didn't have to do before. And I really hate saying this, but it's true. A lot of personal trainers are just rent-a-friends and they get away with running a business where they just thrash people and they don't have to think. It's just quick and easy money and they go home. And they're not actually tipping into exercise science and what actually works long-term for people. So you might need to break up with your trainer. I'm sorry. You also might need to break up with your doctor because he or she might be constantly telling you that you need to do extreme caloric restriction. I've had a lot of clients in these scenarios go to doctors and the doctor's like, this is ridiculous. You're eating too many calories, blah, 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 blah. And so you're constantly going backwards and forwards between the two people. And I'm really sorry, but doctors generally don't understand weight loss other than giving you drugs for type 2 diabetes and Ozempic and things like that. They don't understand nutrition. They only do 2 weeks of nutrition study in their entire medical degree. They don't understand nutrition for performance, nothing like that. So it can be a challenge in these situations where you have to break up with a lot of your old beliefs, but also the people that support the belief that extreme caloric restriction and extreme exercise is the only way to lose weight. Now, something really important is that we need to also pull people away from focusing on their weight. In terms of focusing on weight, though, if you're going to weigh yourself, you need to do it in a strategic way. You can't judge your weight loss from one day to another because we can retain water. We can, when we have period, I weigh 2 kilos, 1 to 2 kilos heavier just before I'm about to get my period and just before I'm about to ovulate. So if I only weighed myself on those days, I would be disappointed. However, if I take my weight every single day and I do it on the same scale at the same time, so I've woken up, gone to the toilet, naked, using my scale in the same spot every day, and I write down that measurement every day and put it into Chronometer, and it will give you an average for the week, and you will see that you actually are losing weight over time. It is important as well because with these people, you want to, when they plateau, because they will lose weight easily with these changes, when they plateau, then you want to implement more changes so they keep going and keep that momentum going. But also, like, we have weeks where we don't lose weight or we put on weight from inflammation or too much sodium, or we have more water that week, or for various different reasons. And so it's really important as a coach, and even if you're just listening and this is going to help you start your own fat loss journey, it's really important to have other subjective measures. And These things will often be the motivation for people to keep going because fat loss isn't everything. What comes along with being obese is quite often a lot of symptoms, like being low in energy, depression, having problems with our stool, problem with our menstrual cycle, having problems with our skin, our energy and mood, and all these kinds of other things. So at the start of working with someone, no matter what their size is, I take quite an extensive assessment of all of these things. And then once a month, we're reviewing all of these things because people, if they're just focusing on the weight loss bit and everything is tied up into that, sometimes they will completely miss the fact that they now sleep so much better, or when they wake up in the morning, they're not a bitch anymore, or they don't hate the world when they wake up anymore. I'm not expecting them to just like jump out of bed and feel amazing, but the mere fact that you wake up not wanting to do something horrible to yourself or be angry at other people and you just wake up feeling neutral is a positive change. Waking up and doing a poo that is solid instead of having a runny poo or being constipated for days is a really healthy change. Having a period that wasn't painful is a healthy change. Not having acne is a healthy change. We need to constantly remind these people of all of the subjective measures that come as a result of improving your health and help them have a really good attachment to them. I know one thing for me that really bothered me when I was overweight was how much I sweat and how much chafing I would get from walking. And I'd never forget the day when I stopped sweating so much for no bloody reason at all. And also when I realized that I didn't have this excessive amount of thigh chafing. Like anyone who's been obese will know that you literally can get skin bleeding between your legs from rubbing together. So, went through this period of always having to wear bike pants to protect my legs. And I remember the day that I didn't have to anymore. I was like, this is amazing. And I actually hadn't lost that much on the scale, but I was like, wow, I don't have to wear these bloody shorts anymore. Amazing. So keeping on top of these and reminding your clients, reminding yourself, have a little journal if you're going to do this yourself. So one of the biggest problems as well is when we do the hardcore dieting and we don't understand what maintenance is. When we do the hardcore diet, we lower our metabolic rate. It is a stress adaptation from being in a diet. So when you finish the diet, the calories that you need are going to be less than what you could eat before you started the diet, whether you were overeating or not. So even if you have a healthy maintenance, when you come out of a diet, you need a refeeding process. So at some point, you are going to have to go into a caloric restriction that is below your maintenance. You will not lose the last amount of weight. The reason why diets fail for people at any weight is one, they don't have a healthy maintenance, so they don't know how to sit at maintenance. So when they finish the diet, they have nowhere to go to. They just go back to what they were doing before. And then also if you do not what your maintenance is and you just go back to maintenance, technically from the diet, you would have lowered your metabolic rate. So you will put weight back on. So you actually need a refeed process, which sometimes, depending on the length of the diet, can take as long as the diet itself. So you will need to first get really good at sitting at maintenance so you know where to go when you get home. And when you're sitting at maintenance, what you're doing is you're actually building up all the habits that you're going to do for the rest of your life. I'm going to make my food every day. I'm going to, have enough food in the house for the week. You're going to overcome all of the obstacles that stopped you from being healthy. I'm a chronic undereater. I'm a chronic undereater from my whole entire life. And my maintenance period has been about always having food prepped so I don't get too busy and skip meals. Because you skip one meal one day, that's okay. But if you skip a meal every other day, all of a sudden you've put yourself into a caloric deficit and then you start having metabolic adaptation to that. So I needed to spend quite a lot of time learning to sit at my maintenance and learning how to eat enough and fuel myself before I could diet. And this is super important for people of all weight, sizes, height, backgrounds do maintenance really well. And honestly, you do want to get to a point where you can do maintenance automatically. So you're not logging, you're not thinking about it, but it takes time for you to do it consistently before you can do that. And if you're going to be going in and out of fat loss phases, you're not going to be able to do maintenance intuitively. You probably want to finish dieting, get to your goal weight, and probably sit at maintenance for 6 months to a year before you can give up logging after that. But yet people just don't understand how to do maintenance. And they don't understand how to refeed back up to maintenance. So generally when we finish diet, we might add 300 calories and then we would sit on that for 2 weeks, wait for the scale to stabilize. Then we might add another 50 to 100 calories for another 2 weeks, and we would do that every 2 weeks until we get back to our maintenance. And we must also be at the same time increasing our strength training back to the strength training we were doing before the diet. Because often your strength training will decrease when you're in a diet phase, or if you're doing more cardio. So, there's a process. So when I write out a plan for someone, it's normally a whole year plan because I need to put in all of their refeed phases, and I'm also increasing their exercise and all of those things. And with some people as well, we'll be having diet breaks. Some people will be doing more severe diets. Some people having diet breaks, refeed days. But there has to be a planned refeed and then a planned time back at maintenance. And this is the key to success in fat loss. So which brings me to the people who feel like they are overweight, or they are overweight, they're 35% and over, and they'd literally but I just don't eat that much food and I'm still overweight. And the only way I can lose weight is to go into an extreme caloric deficit. These people have often done multiple diets throughout their entire life, multiple. And I've seen in this group of people like the worst kind of diets in you, like the HCG diet, where you take these drops that stop you from getting hungry and then you only eat 500 calories. So and there are some scenarios where you can eat 500 calories and do it in a healthy way. I will say that. I'm not encouraging you to do that. That would require eating at a really high maintenance for a certain amount of time and then going into an extreme fat loss phase for a very, very small window and then having a strategic refeed afterwards. It does work. It needs to be done in the right context. But generally, these people go on the HCG diet and they will go on it until they lose the amount of weight they want to lose. That is often too long. Like a 500 calorie diet should really only be done for a week, 2 weeks. They were on a 500 calorie diet for several months or several weeks, several months. And then they'll come out of that. So they'll stop taking the drops. Their appetite comes back and they just go back up to eating a normal amount of food. Every time you diet, your metabolic rate lowers. Every time you come out of the diet, your maintenance calories would have dropped. So you need to refeed back up to a healthy maintenance over a period of time. So this is where I keep saying, like, if we don't learn maintenance, if we don't have a place to go home to, we will always fail. So these people, it's really challenging, and it's very hard because they get stuck in this mindset of, I have to eat less to lose weight. And everyone tells them that too. I've had doctors write letters to refer clients to me or dietitians, whatever, and they're like, basically, this person just lies and they need to keep their hand out of a cookie jar. Everyone thinks these people are lying. They're not lying. They literally cannot eat low enough to get into what is a caloric deficit for them now because of the metabolic adaptation from having eaten so little. And this will happen to people who don't eat carbohydrates. They will not eat carbs for a year and all of a sudden they'll eat carbs and they'll just blow up like a balloon. We'll come to those people in a minute. But with these people who really are under eating, yes, you can have thyroid issues but it's really important to understand that a thyroid issue in this scenario is an adaptation from the lack of food. When we don't have enough food, we can't make a conversion of thyroid hormone from inactive to active. Your body will slow down that and stop using as much thyroid hormone, and you will become hypothyroid. The same is it will not need as much leptin. It will not need as much insulin. So you will become leptin and insulin resistant as soon as you eat more food. So there's a lot of adaptation here that needs to be dealt with. And you might need to spend 6 months working with a coach, building up your food to an appropriate maintenance. So this is where I came from, under eating for years and years and years and years. And then all of a sudden I had a huge amount of stress in my life. And it's like my body was just unable to take it anymore. And I put on a ton of weight and I was really not eating that much food. I had undereaten probably for most of my life. And I had become aware of that and I'd started restoring that, but I got pregnant and then all these other things happened. And I hadn't done the groundwork before I got pregnant and all this other stress happened in my life. So I just collapsed under that. I was literally eating 1,800 calories and I was putting on an excessive amount of weight. And I was breastfeeding and I was still putting on weight. I had no appetite. And every time I went to a doctor, they would say, well, here's this celery juice. Have this celery juice for breakfast. And that was it. It's just celery juice for breakfast. And I was like, this is insane. This can't be right. How can a breastfeeding woman be told to have celery juice for breakfast? There's something wrong here. So what happened over time is I had to decrease my food a bit and then increase it very slowly and strategically over time. And then all of a sudden, I think I was around 2,000 calories and I started to lose weight. So my maintenance calories are like 2,600 calories, but I gradually was refeeding. And what that tells me is that I've restored some of the energetic function. So now energy can actually get into the cell and I can start to give up some of the fat and lose some weight. So I did lose like 15 kilos just eating 2,000 calories. And obviously the more energy you have and the better your ability to get energy into the cell, the more exercise you can do and the more positive adaptation you're going to have from exercise. So all of these things were gradually increasing over time. My ability to lose fat increased over time as well. And 2,000 calories is a deficit for me. So, but I still needed to work on increasing up to what I eat now, which is like 2,600 calories a day. That's taken time. And, it's a strategic process that needs to be done over time. And obviously, yes, you do want to lose weight, and the more fat you lose, the better your body works at using energy. So yes, you do want to lose weight, but you need to be strategic about it. And what's really important is that I only had like 47 kilograms. I think it was less than that, 45 kilos of lean muscle mass. And so what I've done over this time is increase my muscle mass to like 52 kilos. So that is really important. We need to also understand the difference between weight loss and fat loss. A lot of us need to increase our lean muscle tissue, many of us. So we want to be increasing that, and that takes eating more food. You can do that at maintenance. You don't have to go into a surplus to do it. If you are under eating and you slowly increase your food, you will, and increase the stimulus to make muscle, you will increase the muscle. So, I really feel for these people, and it takes time, and I don't have a quick answer for you. You cannot lose weight quickly in this scenario. Your body's lost the ability to lose fat, but you are going to have to go into caloric deficit to lose fat. And you don't just lose fat all of a sudden. You might lose a little bit like I did, but you won't lose all of it. You will have to go into some strategic fat loss phases. But it's really important to understand how much you actually are eating. You need to do a log, and it surprises me, these people, on how little protein they're eating or how little carbohydrate they're eating, how much fat they're eating. Like, we need to have a look at all of these and then get our body strategically to where it needs to get to. And this needs to be done slowly, which is going to bring me to my next group of people, which is the people who have done the pro-metabolic diet, and this is generally a group of people who've not been eating carbohydrates for a really long time. And a lot of people, like, for instance, read Kate Deering's book and they didn't read it properly. but they feel really good. Like they add in milk and they haven't had dairy for years and they feel really good because milk actually is a great source of carbohydrate and energy and calcium and all the things. So you feel really good from drinking it. We add in orange juice and you feel amazing from drinking that. And you just keep going with the adding in, and a lot of these people have this expectation, well, now I'm eating carbs, my body's going to learn how to utilize them again and everything is just going to return to normal. And unfortunately, if we don't log, we don't realize, for example, how many calories, how much fat is in a glass of milk, how much carbohydrate is in a glass of juice. And you are genuinely increasing your caloric intake quite significantly over a short amount of time. And if you're not paying attention to your fat intake, I've had some pro-metabolic people come to see me and they're eating like 3,500 calories a day and like 50% fat sometimes. And I'm not having a go at these people at all because I get it. You feel better and you just be like, oh my God, I can sleep all of a sudden. So I'm just going to keep going with this. But this increase happens too quickly over a really small space and time, and without understanding macronutrients and calories, because as well, a lot of these people have this aversion to logging. Like logging is just for weight loss and for what fat people do, and it causes eating disorders and all these things. But if we don't understand the value of food, we can push our body too far in a too small space of time. If we really have been under eating, some people need to increase by like 50 calories a month because their body really is in a state of unable to use energy. Some people can increase at 100 calories a week. It really depends on the person, what their history is, what their activity is like. Like a lot of people in this scenario will say they have exercise intolerance, which just tells me that they're unable to use fuel when they're exercising. So this system needs to be retrained. One of the problems when we don't eat carbohydrates is our body has to use a different mechanism to get energy into the cell. And this is done by mobilizing stress hormones and done in a way where we're trying to not use too much energy. Then all of a sudden you put the carbohydrates back in and the body has a freak out because now it's like, well, now you want me to use those carbs and I don't know how to use those carbs. And so often it will store all of the excess food as fat because it doesn't know how to utilize that energy. And at the same time, that energy, that excess becomes a burden. And so exercise can feel like a huge stress on the body. So it's not that exercise is bad. It's just that we've lost our metabolic flexibility, ability to switch between burning carbs and fat. And we can't get into the right state to exercise, especially in case of cellular respiration requires oxygen, carbohydrates and oxygen. If we don't have enough carbs, you will not get enough oxygen into the cell. And when we have an excessive amount of oxygen, we're going to expel that and we're going to have issues with carbon dioxide. And a really important part of fat loss is understanding the way we lose fat is why we actually breathe it out. It's a respiratory process. So if we do not have a healthy respiratory system whereby we can utilize carbon dioxide to push oxygen into the cell, so we retain the carbon dioxide for a certain amount of time, and then when we're done with it, we expel the excess, and that's when the fat goes out. That is dependent on us being able to utilize oxygen and carbohydrate at the cell efficiently. So this is why the zone 2 piece is so important in restoring metabolic function and in fat loss and the walking and all of these things, because it encourages this process of using carbohydrate and oxygen at the cell level and expelling fat and carbon dioxide. It's a very simplified explanation of that, but I just hope that helps you understand. Like, we don't need to do the HIIT stuff when we're doing fat loss. And in fact, we can actually make ourselves worse, because when we don't have this ability to get oxygen to the cell level and utilize carbon dioxide, you push yourself past that threshold in the HIIT area, which is anaerobic. And I'm going to get really technical here, but to recover from HIIT training, you need to be able to get back to pushing oxygen into the cell as quickly as possible. So if you can't do that, you're going to keep yourself in this stress state and you actually won't burn any fat. through anything or as much fun as you want to or should be able to. So it's really important. You can read more about this in the book Burn, amazing book. And there's another book, Breathe, where he talks about breathing through your mouth. No, sorry, closing your mouth and breathing through your nose in different training exercise, and fascinating, and looking at how that drives metabolic function. So I think that's all I have to say on excessive fat loss. Unfortunately, like I said, at some point you're going to have to, like if you want to get to 25% body fat, you're going to have to force a restrictive period that's going to be uncomfortable. That's kind of just the way it is. But the more metabolically flexible you are and the higher you've built up your maintenance calories, the more aggressive a diet you can do for a shorter period of time. And then the more skilled you are at prepping your food and hitting your targets, you'll be able to do a really successful refeed period and therefore work yourself back up to maintenance and then maintain that weight for a long period of time. And of course, the more time you spend at maintenance, the more automatic and intuitive that becomes, that you can stop logging and just maintain your body weight for a long period of time. And that's just the ultimate goal, really. But I think that even in the overweight group, the underweight group, any group, we really fail to educate people enough on maintenance, what they need to do every day. Like, what's a holistic program? Do we really need to do all this excessive exercise? No. Like, if you really like doing all that HIIT stuff, if you really like it and you're prepared to do the work to eat enough to be able to do that and recover well enough to be able to do that, then go for it. This whole over-exercising thing is really about under-recovering and under-eating, not necessarily about over-exercising. We also need to accept that you can't achieve an athletic body without enough stimulus, right? Enough muscle mass. And the look that you get is from having enough muscle mass, not necessarily from having a low body weight. So there's so many things. I could literally do a whole podcast about fat loss and weight loss. There's so many variables. I also want to say that there's no absolute, there's no exact mathematical equation, because everybody's body is so complex. There's no exact way of measuring anything, because, that's just assuming that something gets from A to B directly, and it doesn't. It obviously bypasses different things. We also DEXA scans. A DEXA scan isn't even that accurate. It measures the pixels in a photograph. It doesn't actually truly measure fat. The only real way that you can measure someone's body fat is to, cut them up when they're dead and cut all the fat off and weigh it. So, we need to not get hung up so much on all the absolutes. But our focus with any kind of body composition change, extreme fat loss, or as I should say, having to lose a lot of body weight, or even having to lose 5 kilos, or for a lot of people also having to put on weight in terms of muscle mass, we need to learn how to do health well. We need to learn how to do everyday life well. We need to learn how to do maintenance well. And for those people who really are overweight, you will often be able to lose quite a lot of weight just going to the maintenance that is your predicted, the maintenance for the weight that you want to achieve, So for me, I would really like to be 68 kilos with 20% body fat and 25% body fat. For me to achieve that amount of muscle mass, I need to be eating 2,800 calories. And I need to learn how to be comfortable at 2,800 calories. So I've got somewhere to go home to at the end of my fat loss phase. I only have 12 kilos to lose, but I am making sure that I really, really, really get good at that 2,600 calories. And so, for whatever weight you want to lose, that is a huge part of successful weight loss. So I really hope that all these people in this category feel somewhat heard today, because I think that's the big thing, is a lot of them don't feel like the space is being held for them. They don't feel heard. They don't feel seen. And I totally get that. And so that's why I wanted to do this podcast for you guys. Let me know what you think. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really helps me get it out there to more people. Like, I really think this is so important for so many people to hear this, what I had to say today. And it helps me get really good guests on the show as well. So don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And I'd love it when you guys DM me and tell me what you personally got from the episode. And that could be anonymous. It doesn't matter. It really, like, someone sent me the most amazing message after the last podcast episode, and I was in tears. And it just makes me want to make more podcasts for you guys. So please send me any feedback. I also really am open to negative feedback as well, so I can improve and make these more educational and enjoyable for you guys. So send me that too. But bye for now, and I'll see you next. I'll talk with you next time.
I'm Leila Lutz, and you've been listening to The Body Never Lies. If you haven't yet, please go to your favourite podcast app and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. All the resources and references from this episode are waiting for you on my website, leilalutz.com. Just click on podcast and look for this episode. Now join me next week for another episode of The Body Never Lies. Thank you so much for listening.
Free.